You have to love your clients. You have to love being of service, and you have to love finding solutions for your clients.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of CREBcast. Today, we are very honored to be joined by our current chair of the board of directors, Susanita de Diego. Welcome, Susanita.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
So nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Before we get started, just in case you're wondering why I am dressed the way I am, today is our very first international block party here at CREB. And we will be celebrating the diversity of our membership. So I thought I'd participate by wearing my traditional Punjabi salwar kameez. So that is the reason that I am dressed this way, just in case you were wondering.
I should have brought, I am exactly half German and half Panamanian. So I don't know if I could combine those two outfits and split it down the middle, but it would have been a dirndl on one side and a Panamanian costume on the other. I think that would have been...
That would have been very cool.
It would have been a conversation starter for sure.
You could have wore your German outfit on the top.
Oh, that's
And then
true.
you could have worn your, Spanish skirt on the bottom.
Maybe next year.
Right, there you go. We'll do this next year. I'm sure it's going to be a great success. There's a lot of busy people out there setting everything
looks
up.
wonderful, actually.
Yeah. So, Susanita, how long have you been in the business?
Well, if you don't try and factor my age into this after I tell you the number of years, I'll tell you the number of years. So I began my real estate career 38 years ago.
Wow.
In Vancouver.
That is amazing. I don't think we would be able to figure out your age. You look amazing.
Thank you.
You really do. So you started out in Vancouver, and then, so were you a real estate agent in Vancouver?
I was.
Yeah.
So I began as a real estate agent, and after 4 years, I was very successful, but had really burnt out. And the company that I worked for, the older realtors will remember, was a company called NRS Block Brothers Realty.
Oh, my goodness.
And we did our own in-house training.
Right.
And they were looking for someone to run the training division. And I thought that it might be a nice idea to take some time. So I applied for the job, and much to my amazement, achieved it. And so because I am obviously type A personality, I couldn't just relax. So I rewrote the curriculum of the training division and then took the next 4 years and traveled and taught. And it was extremely fulfilling and wonderful.
Wow. I'm not surprised at all that you got the position. And your type A personality, what that says about you is that you're just organized, and you just know when you look at something, you think, how can I make this better?
That's exactly right.
And that's just what you did. And I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people out there that appreciate that.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you're in a position like that, you do end up with well, at least in my case, many of the realtors that I taught, I still hear from today saying, hey, that suggestion that you had on how to deal with a client in a difficult situation, I still use that idea today with my clients, and it's very fulfilling after this much time.
My goodness, right? When you get those calls, you're just like, wow, like you just feel on top of the world, right? That you were able to, even in a minuscule way, you were able to change somebody's trajectory in that moment.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What moved you to Calgary?
So
you got the pleasure to enjoy your company.
I had spent all of my growing up on the West Coast in Vancouver and Seattle, Washington, and there was a franchisee of NRS who was opening an office in Calgary, and they asked me to come out and help them with their training and management for their first year. So in 1995, I thought, well, I've never had this kind of an adventure before. I'll check Calgary out. And from almost the first moment that I arrived, I absolutely fell in love with this city. I love the entrepreneurial spirit of it. I love the friendliness of the community, which is really weird coming from a big city like Vancouver. That was one of the things I didn't know I was missing. And I love the big sky. I love the mountains, and I love the people. So I immediately felt at home and never wanted to leave.
That is fantastic. We're so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
So 30 years later, you're still loving it, still loving the people.
Yes, my husband is born and raised Calgarian, and he would like to be elsewhere, and I never want to leave. I love it here.
The people that are born and raised here, they're the ones who are clamoring to maybe have an adventure somewhere else.
Totally.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And so in 95, when you came here, you did the training, and then did you get your license shortly thereafter, or did you always have it?
I got my license immediately.
Okay.
And I knew that I would always sell. It's my passion. It's my love. And so I helped that office out for the first year and then jumped into sales right away. And it was a really interesting experience because I was a new realtor virtually twice. So the first time I was a new realtor in Vancouver, I worked really hard to establish myself. I was very young. I looked even younger. And I had to do the same thing all over again when I moved to Calgary. And so I spent the first 2 years working really hard again to establish myself, and then enjoyed my career ever since.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely established yourself, done a great job. What brought you to the volunteer circle of CREB? How did you come about? I know you're one of those rarities that basically you came in and you kind of skipped everything else and you went right to the board of directors table. And that is a rare thing to find these days in our volunteers, because everybody kind of needs those steps to get trained first and then make it to the board of directors. But you just came in and took over right away, and we loved it.
The committee work is so important, I think, for all volunteers, because it does provide you with the education that you need to understand how governance works. So it's really important to have some sort of experience like that before you actually get to the board table. For myself, I'd had a bit more experience doing other things that are perhaps related. So for a few years, I worked with the City of Calgary Assessment Review Board, which is tribunal work.
Oh, wow.
Very enjoyable
I bet.
work. And so that kind of laid a foundation for understanding a bit how governance works. And I had sat on boards that were for-profit before I volunteered for Calgary. And how that came about is we have a wonderful committee called the BDLSC, Board Development Leadership Standing Committee.
Right.
And great people like Sam identify people who are going to be very valuable volunteers and take them to the BDLSC, and the BDLSC looks at those folks and then makes recommendations. And so I went through that committee and was invited to meet with the president of the real estate board at that time and Alan Tennant, our CEO, to discuss what that volunteer opportunity would look like. And I am ashamed to admit that I hadn't volunteered for CREB prior to that, because I believe that this industry has given me so much, and it really is important to give back to the community that provides you with this wonderful livelihood and opportunity to help people. So then I jumped in with both feet.
Yes, you certainly did. It is a good recommendation to get your feet wet, so to speak, and volunteer on other committees, but it sounds like you already came to us with a lot of experience. Is it different working with not-for-profits as opposed to for-profit?
It is actually quite a bit different.
It is, hey?
You wouldn't think so. Now, the principles of governance are the same, obviously. But in a for-profit world, you're providing value to your shareholders. In a not-for-profit world, and in the case of CREB, we're providing value to our members. So it's a different focus going into all of those meetings. It's a different focus going into strategic planning. I'm really proud of how CREB puts the needs and essentials of their members first. And it's in everything we do. And it was a really refreshing change for me to come from that for-profit world to the not-for-profit board. It's hugely important work. So I'm really happy to have had the opportunity to volunteer.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I have only worked here at CREB as an adult, and I love that our focus is on our membership. I don't know if I would thrive in a for-profit company, but I definitely thrive in a not-for-profit
You do,
company.
and I have never seen anyone more committed to serving our members than you. You are amazing, so we're just so lucky to have you.
Thank you. I'm very blessed to be able to still be working here, and I love my job. I can't even think about retirement or
Please
anything
don't.
like that.
Please don't ever.
I will not. What would be a piece of advice that you would give to new realtors that are coming into the business now with all the technology and all of the different social media platforms that they have access to?
I have so many pieces of advice that comes from being old, but I think first and foremost, and I have to speak from personal experience for me, you have to love your clients. You have to love being of service, and you have to love finding solutions for your clients. However that happens, whether it is using technology or, learning about what works and what doesn't work, I think that is first and foremost. The first year or two that you're in this industry, that is going to be setting the stage for who your clients are going to refer you to in the future. So you need to know who your best potential source of great clients that you're going to get along with, that you have the same sort of philosophies on life. Because what a lot of realtors do, I think, is they'll work with anybody because that's what they need to do in order to make a living.
Yes.
And this is a commission-based industry. You have to, and I know I tried to work with everybody. But I think, yes, work with the people that you need to work with, but then choose who you're going to continue to work with and partner with in the future.
Yeah.
And then in terms of technologies, there are so many to choose from.
So many.
The first piece of technology I would suggest that everybody uses to get a good CRM, which is a customer relationship management software that allows you to keep track of everything. So you put in all of your processes that you have to go through in order to work with the transaction, work with the prospect in terms of follow-up, categorize who everybody is. Because at the beginning, when you've got, 50 contacts, pretty easy to keep track of everything. But after a couple of years, when you've got hundreds and thousands of contacts, you really need a good methodology for keeping track of who they are and how you're going to follow up with them. So that would be the second piece. Those are the two most important things. And then everything else from there is what you like.
Right.
Because, for instance, we've got obviously all kinds of social media. Many realtors are doing, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I'd say probably for the younger realtors, TikTok and Insta are more prolific. Old people like me use more Facebook. But do what you like. You can't do it all.
Yeah.
I would say, make sure that you're proficient at one thing before you move to the next thing so that you're not too scattered. And then when you're using your CRM, which also doubles as your day timer, make sure that you're allowing time for all of the things that you need to do and make sure that you're well scheduled.
Yeah.
Which includes your social time.
Right.
But all of those things, because it can all get away from
Yeah.
you. And I can tell you from personal experience, after my 4th year in real estate and achieving a lot of success in Vancouver, I didn't do it right to start off with, and I was definitely exhausted at the end of the 4th year.
After being in Vancouver for 4 years and getting burnt out, I'm sure there's a lot of lessons that you learned from that. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I'm getting from you, from the advice that you're giving to the new members, is it's not about sales, it's about relationships.
Absolutely.
And it's about being organized. Mm-hmm. As long as you are organized, you're not scattered, and you're focused on that one customer and their needs, you will be successful. I feel one of the things that I've noticed since I've been working here for over 3 decades is that your guys, when you first start out, you're just going 24/7. Mm-hmm. If somebody calls you at midnight, there's no parameters at that point because you're just trying to make a living. But to your point, if you could carve out some personal time and have that work-life balance, it's just really nice, because then you're there for your family, you're there for yourself, and you're taking care of yourself. And that will allow you to take care of your clients.
For sure. And I think also, too, you need to know your why. And, most people enter this industry because they want to have the flexibility and they want to earn a lot of money.
Yes.
Those are kind of the two things.
Yeah.
But if you earn a lot of money and you actually don't have the flexibility, just by the way.
That's right.
Because your clients kind of drive your day.
Yeah.
But if you can't bring your family with you, then oftentimes you'll lose your family. So one of the things that I started doing very early on in my career is always having a business plan. It's hugely important. Have an idea of what your roadmap is. But the formulation of my business plan always included my family. And there was always a reward for the family at the end of the goal, so that it's not just my goal, it's this is what we get to do if we reach this goal. And I think that the longer that I've been in the industry, the more that I recognize that if you don't have those milestones along the way, then it's always what's next, what's better, what's bigger. And I think that there are different paths for every realtor. There are different measures of success for every realtor, and it's not always about the volume.
That's right.
It's about, I know that every single client that I've touched has achieved, whatever it is that they've achieved, and their experience has been fantastic because I've taken care of them. That to me is more important than selling 5,000 homes.
That's right.
It's the personal experience.
Yeah.
And where I was going to go with that too is that I think that a lot of realtors, when they first start out, think that it is all about the volume. You can have a wonderful, fantastic real estate career with selling, I'm not going to give you a number, but X number of homes, having a month off every year, spending time with your family, and you don't necessarily have to get to that next level. You can if you want. You can create a team, you can do volume, but you don't have to. And I think for me, if I had known that going in, I would have, the first probably 10 years of my career, I would have spent my time differently.
Yeah. Well, when we know better, we do better. I've met your husband, Michael. He's a lovely man. And I know that if we don't have the support of our family, we can sink really quickly, because sometimes you may have, a challenging client, I will call them, and then you go home and, if you don't have that connection with your family because you're always working, you don't know what's going on with their lives, you're not going to have that support from them either. So I'm really glad that you touched on that work-life balance, because I don't think enough of our membership thinks about themselves when they're out there. So reaching that next pinnacle of success isn't always as important as, having that groundedness from your family. Is there any other career that you would have gone into if you were not a realtor? Is there something else that you're really super passionate about?
Surprisingly, yes. So through my tribunal work and through the governance work, I think I would have loved to have been a lawyer.
Oh, I think you would have made a great lawyer.
I love the research.
Yeah.
I love the putting the puzzle pieces together and gathering all the information. It's part of what we do at board work. So if there's any member out there that really enjoys looking at a situation, getting all the information about what is going to be the best decision, I mean, that is basically what board work is about. But there's a lot of that, of course, in the legal field. I think I would have loved to have been a lawyer. When I was really young, I was involved in dance and performing in musical theater. And, if you had asked me when I was 20, I would have said that. But now I think I would have wanted to have been a lawyer.
Yeah.
But I think the beauty of real estate, and this is something that I touched on, is that this career can take you into so many different places. I have really good friends in the industry who maybe weren't best suited to be a real estate agent for whatever reason, but they've found their success and joy in their work doing other things like, being an employee of a real estate board or a real estate association, or teaching in the real estate world, or doing tribunal work, or doing a lot of board work. So there's some directors that I know that do now board work, paid board work with other organizations. This is a launching pad for so many things. And then I find just as a realtor, because of the experiences that I've had, it all still contributes to doing the best possible job for a client, because there might be something that I've taken from another, peripheral piece of work that applies to that situation and that helps the client.
Yeah.
And it's just such a pleasure when that happens.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that you would have made a great lawyer. You're not emotional. You're very logical, and I think that you're very, very smart.
Thank you.
Isn't real estate a little bit like being a lawyer, because you're kind of representing a side and then you have to go into negotiations? You're not necessarily arguing, for lack of a better word, but you are representing a client in a way where you're trying to win something for them.
I would say you're advocating.
Advocating, that's a good word.
There are pieces of this business. That's why it's so fascinating. That is a part of it. You are an advocate, and you are in a negotiation, kind of like being a lawyer for sure. But you have to do it in such a way. I'm glad you said something about my being not emotional, because I think it's really important when you're going into a negotiation that if you get emotional, you could react in a way that isn't serving the best interest of your clients. Your clients can be as emotional as they need to be, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you need to be not completely unemotional, but fairly unemotional in order to have a successful transaction on behalf of your client, I feel. Mm-hmm. But I think that that's just a portion of it, right? So you're part psychologist, because you do, and that was what I was studying for. I actually started selling real estate to make enough money to go back to school to be a psychologist. You have to understand really the emotional need of your client, but also what the real need is of the client to help them make the right decisions. So you have to be a bit of a psychologist. And, sometimes you're there because of family trauma, whatever it is. So you have to be very respectful of that, and having a bit of a psychology background actually has helped me. And also, again, just that desire to be of service and to help. But then you get to do this whole other thing, which is marketing.
Yes.
Which is so much fun.
Right.
And you can be so creative in that way. And one of my most favorite things is to create the ad copy that's compelling to whoever it is the target market is for that property. I love that part of it.
Right.
And then also finding new and creative ways to market. And that's why I also love everything we can do with social media, because you can expand the marketing in a way that you never could have, 38 years ago when I first started selling real estate. We had a catalog. Wow.
I know.
And a newspaper.
We had a newspaper right up until COVID.
Yes.
Which is incredible. At some points, the newspaper was probably as thick as the catalog some weeks. But yes, I totally remember the catalogs for sure. I think that if everybody who came into the business, they had to take a mandatory introduction to psychology, I think it would be a great idea, because they would be able to understand their clients and themselves in sometimes you have a reaction to something and you're like, why did I react that way? Mm-hmm. And maybe these things could help you understand.
That's such an important point, because in every aspect of what we do as realtors, it's personal.
It is.
There are other lines of work where it is absolutely not personal, and everything you do is completely, again, unemotional, and you're not having to consider, somebody said something that is totally out of this world, maybe even out of character, and you're going, where did that come from? That is one of the biggest components of what we do when we're dealing with people, is to understand what that underlying reason is for them saying whatever it is that they've said. And it's not just clients, it's also other realtors in a negotiation. Why did they come across that way?
Exactly.
And I always like to think, don't take it for what they said. Really think about why they said what they said. And, who knows? They could have had a really bad day. Maybe a family member is ill. Maybe their dog died. Who knows?
Exactly.
Just, try and be compassionate. And I find that really helps, not just with dealing with clients, but also in a negotiation.
Yeah. I think knowing the culture is also really important.
Very important.
I was talking to one of our members a couple of years ago, and he shook the hand of the gentleman, and then he went to shake the hand of the lady that was in the transaction, and she was utterly offended, and he had no idea why. Afterwards, they had a conversation, and he is not allowed to extend his hand to shake her hand. That is disrespectful. So in those cases, it would be nice to maybe do a little bit of research on the culture, so that you're making sure that you're not offending anybody, because ultimately that could be the loss of a deal.
It could be.
Yeah.
And there is a certification called a Certified International Property Specialist, which I have. And in that course, it teaches you the different cultures and also the different ways that they approach a real estate transaction. And that is contained in the course. In this culture, for instance, in some European countries, it's much more formal than it is here. So the dress is different. The way that you address the person that you're dealing with is different. And it's important to know that about each culture that you work with. I was very fortunate in growing up. My father was Panamanian, and he was a consul. So he was consul general for Panama, stationed in Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
And so our house was United Nations. We had people from everywhere, always, all the time. And so my dad was very instrumental in teaching us, everybody is to be given absolutely the same respect. Everybody is treated the same, except for you do need to know that there are some things that in some cultures you can or cannot do. And we needed to know that growing up. Otherwise, it would have affected my father's position.
Absolutely. What a great way to grow up. It opens up your world to so many different things.
Yes, we were lucky.
Yeah, very lucky. I would love to know if there's a story, whether it's funny or just memorable, something that stands out in your mind in your real estate career where you're like, I will never forget that situation, or I will never forget those clients because of whatever reason. Maybe it was a challenge, or maybe it's because they've become part of your family. Anything that you would like to share?
There's so many. How to pick one? I'll pick one.
Okay.
So in my second year selling real estate, I represented a family.
So I'm just going to interrupt you. Was it in Calgary or
in
Vancouver? Okay.
So my second year in Vancouver, I represented a family, and I think I was their fourth realtor with a property that wasn't selling.
Okay.
So I went in. Again, you have to picture me that was at age 26, and I looked about, I'm going to say 17, 18 years old, and they were mature. So I went in and I presented and was realistic, and we listed, I thought, at a realistic price. The marketing was really good, and we were able to sell it, not right away, but it took a while. And it was the best testimonial I've ever had from a client, because it was how difficult it was to sell this property, and that I was able to achieve a sale for them. But that's not the story. The story is that they became my adopted parents.
Oh, my.
So Bob and Gladys have both passed now, but they and their family became like my second family.
Oh.
And he was a retired auditor from CRA, and he specialized in auditing real estate salespeople.
Oh, my.
So he did my taxes every year. I'd give him this huge big box full of receipts. I never organized anything. I'd just say, here you go, Bob. And he would sort through it all and categorize it. And I knew I would never get audited because he did it properly.
That's fantastic.
But they were very special to me. Yeah.
And so you knew them for the rest of their lives.
The rest of their lives.
Oh, that's so nice.
Mm-hmm. And when Gladys passed away, she passed away first. She had a heart attack and she went into hospital.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
She was hilarious. When they were trying to figure out her cognitive ability after the first heart attack, they said, what's your name? How old are you? And one of the questions was, who's the prime minister? And she said, who cares? So anyway, I had given her a little pink bear to have at the hospital, and I still have that bear to this day.
Oh, that's such a heartwarming story. That's so nice. I've spoken to many members who are now doing generational deals.
Yes.
They've done the parents, and then they transacted with the children, and now it's the grandchildren. And those are just such heartwarming because, again, like you just said, they become your family.
They do.
And they want to also take care of you, just as much as you want to take care of them. So I appreciate you sharing that. In closing, is there anything else that you would like to share? I know you want to encourage the members to, look at more into volunteering with CREB and get more involved. Was there anything else that you would like to chat about?
That's actually what I would like to chat about. Volunteering is so rewarding on so many levels, and I would encourage the younger CREB generation to come, because I think, I remember one member saying something to the effect of, I look at the board of directors and it's all, old Caucasian people.
Yeah.
And it's true. And that's not what we want. At the board, we want critical thinkers, yes, but we want people of all diversity.
Yeah.
The rewards that you get from this work is fantastic. at any committee level, at the board level, you're making decisions on behalf of members. You're potentially changing the trajectory of how CREB works with its members into the future. You're helping to identify things that will happen to our industry in the future that you can actually help with now. And I would say, don't be intimidated. Start with a committee. And if you find you enjoy the work, invite other people. And, this is the way that we can create the best potential organization for our members in the future. So please do volunteer.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It's like voting. If you don't vote, you can't complain about who got into office. So it's the same thing here. If we make a rule change or a process change, you cannot really complain about it if you haven't been involved in giving your feedback.
True. And by the way, all the rule changes that we do make, it's all member driven.
Yes.
It's because of either member input that something needs to happen here. It doesn't come from the top down. It comes from the members up.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you're very busy, but I also know that you do encourage people if they're having challenges or that they just need somebody to talk to, just to give you a call, reach out to you, and you're always willing to have a coffee. I don't know how you fit it into your schedule, but somehow you manage. Maybe you don't sleep enough. I don't know where the sacrifice is.
That's why I got this watch, and it tells me I don't sleep enough. But yes, and thank you for mentioning that, Sam, too, because honestly, any member that has any question, concern, completely confidential conversation, please feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Thank you so much, Susanita. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of CREBcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you and have a great day.